Monkey Legends here. Welcome back. If you watched the first video, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Was Saved 6 Paths. See, well, I forgot to shout out my last video, but shout out to Photon of so6p. He made me this thumbnail, and check out his channel because he makes good what ifs. So, yeah, forgot about that, the last part. My bad, Photon. But anyway, let's get into the video. So where we last left off should have been right before the Land of Waves arc, right? So this Land of Waves arc, well, things will go kind of like in canon, where Tazano will lie about the rank of the mission and all of that stuff. So they're in the third Hokage's office, where after they were doing the D-rank mission, Sasuke gets tired of doing D-rank missions, and he complains to the third Hokage. And he asks Hokage for a higher rank mission. He asks Kakashi. Kakashi says they're ready. So he tells Sasuke to walk in. Sasuke, being the drunk guy he is, will come in and make fun of everyone just like normal. Except when he goes to make fun of Hinata, he senses bloodlust. As Naruto would have ignored when he made fun of him, but when he went to make fun of Hinata, he felt a glare. He felt like he was going to die if he said anything else. So instead, he shut up like he was supposed to. As Kakashi tells them to meet at the gates of Leaf Village in an hour, Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke all leave to go pack their things. Time skip an hour later when they're at the gate of the village and they're getting ready to leave. We see Shikamaru and Choji walking up to Naruto. While Naruto is carrying a scroll full of kunai, clothes, and of course Ichiraku ramen because he's Naruto. You can't let go of Ichiraku ramen. So he is carrying a scroll of that. And he's talking with Shikamaru and Choji. As he arrives at the gate, he says goodbye to Shikamaru and Choji. Well, hold on. Go back. So, go back to before I said he says goodbye to them. Because I messed that part up. Let's say Shikamaru had a thought because he realized how weirdly Naruto acts around Hinata, like he's protective of her. But he isn't like that to anyone else. So he, to poke fun at Naruto, suggests him ask Hinata on a date when they get back in the village. Naruto, turning completely red after hearing this, would say, I don't know, maybe. As then Choji would try to encourage him to do it. And Naruto would begin doubting himself, like, I don't know. We'll just see when I get back. So, as that's when they arrive at the gate, Naruto says goodbye to Shikamaru and Choji, and they leave the village. And when they walk near the puddle, Hinata, being on guard with her Byakugan activated, could already see that there was a puddle there. That puddle was fake. But she didn't say anything. She played dumb, basically. Naruto, also noticing this puddle, would signal to Kakashi and Sasuke. Sasuke wouldn't understand the signal, but Kakashi would. So when the two demon brothers would pop out, Kakashi would fake his death like in canon. Naruto, instead of attacking Naruto, Hinata, or Sasuke, they went directly to the bridge builder. So Naruto would substitute the bridge builder with himself, parry the claw weapon they had with the kunai, and kill the demon brother that attacked him. As in, Hinata would lock all the chakra points to the second demon brother, knocking him out. As they would find some water source like a nearby stream, splash water on the other demon brother's face to wake him up after they tied him to a tree. As in, let's say Naruto would interrogate him, but he wouldn't be able to get anything. Naruto, being a more peaceful type of guy, at least not into torturing and things such as, he asks Kakashi to take over. And Kakashi gets information from the demon brother that that Tasuno has a bounty on his head. And that there could possibly be other missing ninja attacking them on their way to the Land of Waves. As Kakashi would ask his team if they want to continue this mission, after Tasuno explains about how they didn't have enough money to pay for a proper ranked mission. They would still continue just like in canon, as the part with Zabuza would happen, where they found the the white rabbit, and Naruto, instead of hitting it directly with a kunai, he'd throw a kunai near it to bait whoever was in the bushes, because he knew they would just substitute if he threw a kunai at them. So he threw it near them, and he heard a poof. So he went and looked in the bushes and saw a white rabbit. Naruto realizing immediately what this was, as he had fought ninja who substituted themselves when he tried to fight back when he was younger. So he then notifies Kakashi that there is a missing ninja nearby, and they have to be at least Chunin ranked, because only Chunin can substitute themselves with living things. I'm just going to say that in this canon, that's how it works. As Genin can only substitute themselves with logs. So, Naruto, then, as Kakashi, hearing about this, would immediately take out a Sharingan. As then they'd hear a sword coming. Hinata, sensing this, would tell everyone to get down, as Kakashi would pull down Tatsuno, and Naruto and Sasuke would duck down, as the sword goes flying over their heads and Zabuza lands on it. As he'd say, Kakashi of the Sharingan, as he become a Jonin instructor. Oh, how much fun it'll be to slaughter you and your team. But I'll give you a chance. Hand over the bridge builder, and I'll let you live. As Kakashi says, Zabuzamamochi, demon of the mist. Unfortunately, I cannot do that, as it is my mission to escort him back to the Land of Waves. So, we must battle. As they begin their battle, the same thing would happen as in canon, but much faster, as Kakashi would have taken the Sharingan out earlier, although Zabuza would be slightly more injured. And Kakashi would be trapped in the water prison. Sasuke, not wanting to cooperate with Naruto in this because he was jealous of how much power he has compared to himself. Because after the bell test, Naruto and Sasuke demanded Naruto spar with him at full power. So Naruto did. And he thoroughly washed Sasuke. So, anyway, Sasuke ever since has not wanted to even associate himself with Naruto, because he feels himself becoming enraged at the very thought of working with him. So Naruto and Hinata will have to work together on this. As Sasuke will just start spamming fireball jutsus over and over again because he's stubborn. And he's doing whatever he thinks will defeat Zabuza. even though in the back of his head there's a feeling that he just feels like he has to work with Naruto in order for this to work. So in the end, after Naruto and Hinata tried about 3 or 4 different plans and they all failed, Sasuke decides he'll work with Naruto. As they do the same plans in canon, except Hinata will be launching air palms, distracting Zabuza's water clones, while Naruto will transform into the demon wind shuriken. So they would still do the same plans in canon. They'll get Kakashi out, but instead of them just going back to the sidelines, Naruto would continue fighting Kakashi against Zabuza. As when Haku would interfere, instead of only putting Zabuza in a near-death state, he'd also put Naruto in a near-death state. As Hinata, thinking she had lost Naruto, as she had a very massive crush on him at this time, would unlock the Tensegon. Because I'm just gonna say the same way Hagoromo unlocked the Rinnegan, Hinata unlocked the Tensegon. So she unlocks the Tensegon, and she ends up using the Tensegon beam. Well, the beam attack, the one that slices the moon in the movie, and it kills Haku immediately. Well, it kills Haku and Zabuza immediately. As then Kakashi would pass out, and Sasuke would go over to them both. Hinata, checking Naruto's pulse, would realize that, well, Hinata checking with her Byakugan would see that Naruto still has chakra, meaning he's still alive. As if you die, you will not have any chakra in your body. So she'd be relieved that he's alive, as she would pick up Naruto, and Sasuke would carry Kakashi, as Tasuno helped them go to his house, or guided them to his house. As his daughter would have been worried seeing 2 passed out ninja on the backs of 2 other ninja. But after she saw Tasuno unscathed, she wouldn't feel anywhere near as worried as before. As now we skip to the dinner, where Inari begins to, well, go off about how they don't understand what pain feels like. And this would have been after Naruto recovered, and let's say because he's half Otsutsuki in this, he would recover quickly. He'd recover in a day or 2. It still could take Kakashi just as long as in Kanon to recover. So Inari would go off about how they're gonna die and they don't know what true pain is. Naruto would get angry at this, accidentally flaring his Sharingan, as it became a Three-Tomo in this moment, as he would say, I don't understand what pain is. I've been tortured and beaten every day of my life since I was 4. You've had a mother, a grandfather. I've had no one. The only thing that's helped me get through this was Hinata. You've had a village of people who support you. You had known your father. I don't even know who my parents are. All of the years and years of torture. I should have given up, but I haven't. Because in life, you just have to keep moving. It's the only way to get through it, is to keep moving. You can't give up. As then, Inari would start crying as he'd go upstairs, and Naruto would go outside, trying not to let his anger get the better of him, as he'd start training. As Instead of meeting Haku, he hears someone's voice in his head. And this voice would be Kaguya, trying to influence him and trick him into releasing her. As she would say, as she would ask him for help and say that someone evil had sealed her away when all she was trying to do was to take back what was rightfully hers. As Naruto would ask who this is, as she would say, I cannot tell you that yet, for you are not ready to know my true name. For now, you may call me Mother Earth. I don't know why I came up with that. That's just a random name I came up with. But anyway, will you help me? Naruto, not knowing what she meant by help her, says yes. As this is when Black Zetsu comes out. And Black Zetsu says, well, I am what I am the will of Mother Earth. As if you want to help her, you'll have to work with me. And we have to get these 9 special, let's say, so the tailed beasts will have sources like 9 tokens of their power. Instead of having get 9 bijus, they have to get the token of that biju. Meaning you have to get the tailed beast, destroy its body, and the token would contain the soul. See, the 9 tails token had split when Minato sealed half the 9 tails in Naruto. So they just need you could use the tailed beast chakra to fix the token, but you need both halves of it. So anyway, continuing on with the video. So at this point, they will be trying to trick Naruto. Naruto, feeling something was up, would say, what are these tokens? As Zetsu would explain that these tokens are special as they can be used to do many things. They can heal, they can give power. If you can wield them correctly, you can do anything. But Naruto, after, let's say, he did talk with Hagoromo maybe once or twice. And when they first talked, he explained everything about Kaguya and about the Tailed Beast tokens, or the token, so to speak. As Naruto would have talked to the 9 Tails as well, and would have told him about the situation about his split token. So Naruto would then realize that you must be Black Zetsu, and then he realized the voice, you must be Kaguya. I won't let you trick me, as then he'd block her out of his mind. As setting a reminder for himself as to when he unlocks his full power, he will have to strengthen the seal on the moon, so that not even her voice can come out. As in, he starts to train, and he passes out. And when he wakes up, he just goes back home. But him being extra sleepy, he'd still sleep in. Gato Slug would still appear. Inari this time would try to fight them off, but end up being defeated because he has no training. So Naruto would actually end up killing both of the thugs in the blink of an eye and disposing their bodies. So neither Inari or his mom would see what he did. They would just see the thugs disappear. So the so the thugs would die. Naruto, sensing something was wrong, he would have already had a flying Raijin mark on Hinata, so he would teleport to the bridge and he'd see the the three of them fighting off Gato's army of thugs, which just for plot's sake would be in the would be in the thousands, which would be around 1,500 men. So, as Gato would have told them to kill the Jonin and the brat and leave the girl, as she would be a good slave, I guess. That feels weird talking about, but anyway. So the battle started as they were holding as Kakashi, Sasuke, and Hinata were holding their ground, but they were starting to lose the battle as they were running out of chakra. As Sasuke would end up being knocked out, but when he was about to be killed, Naruto, flying Raijin in from his mark on Hinata, and on the thug that was about to stab Sasuke in the back, saving him and pushing and moving Sasuke away from the battlefield. As in he'd come back and start battling the thugs himself. As he'd see that Kakashi, although being a Jonin, was struggling. Kakashi had defeated around 50 of the thugs and was starting to run out of chakra. In this battle, Kakashi had to use his Sharingan, but he could only push it to two Tomoes because he was still recovering. So he he was still fighting, and he ended up being stabbed in the leg, which slowed him down. As in, he was stabbed in the arm. Although Kakashi wouldn't die from this, he was slowed down dramatically. So Naruto had to move him away from the battlefield as well. As in, it was just he and Hinata battling. As the thugs were not trying to kill Hinata, she wouldn't have fallen very easily. So she was just being bombarded by many, many swords. And at this point, she would have the rotation, but she could only do it around 20 times before she got tired because she hadn't mastered it yet. And so she had defeated a good 20 of the thugs, but she was running out of energy. As in, she would be knocked out, tied up, and the thugs who grabbed her would try to sneak away from the battlefield because they knew if they had a feeling that if they angered Naruto, that they could die. So Naruto, realizing that Hinata's chakra was slowly moving away from him, would find the thugs and kill them. But Hinata would be so exhausted from losing that much chakra that she wouldn't be breathing. But Naruto would be thinking she died. Because this time her heart wasn't beating either. As in he would end up on accident developing the Rasen Shuriken. Because he'd be well, feeling a flood of emotions. He'd end up activating the Nine Tails chakra with the Rasengan, and he was trying to do a wind jutsu, but he put too much wind chakra into the Rasengan, and he formed the Rasen Shuriken. As in, he'd throw it, as it would kill half of the thugs that were left. So there'd only be around, let's say there would be around 500 left. As then we'd see the villagers and Inari come, as a bloody battle would then ensue. As in the end, the villagers would defeat Gato and his men, leaving only Gato As in Naruto, who would end up coming face to face with Gato, would throw him to the villagers and let them decide what they wanted to do with him. As they would give him the same fate he did Inari's father, which I believe was tying him to a mast and beating him to death, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, that'll be the end of the bridge will still be named the Great Naruto Bridge, and they will go back to the Hidden Leaf Village. I might have forgotten about Hinata Sensegan. Let's just say she doesn't know how to activate it. Well, that she couldn't activate. Well, she couldn't use its abilities because of how much chakra she was using. So go back to Leaf Village. In this series, Naruto and Konohamaru would still have that same sensei and student relationship. So they would. So when Kankuro grabs Konohamaru and tries to, well, punch him, Naruto, being able to hear Konohamaru across the village, was flying Raijin to him. And, well, he was flying Raijin to him, get him away from Kankuro, and punch Kankuro across the village. As Tamari and Garo would be shocked. Garo would not have announced his presence yet, but he then would. But Naruto would have already noticed him. Because Naruto can sense the tailed beast chakra, as he had sensed Gaara from the moment he had stepped in the village. So Naruto would tell Gaara to come out from the tree. As Gaara got down from the tree, as then he, Tamari, and Naruto would begin to talk. As Gaara would go on his whole ranting thing about him proving his existence to Mother and all that, and whatever he was talking about with Shikaku and all that. So anyway, this when Kankuro would arrive back and Hinata would walk by. As Konohamaru would still be there, as when Hinata walked by, she said, "Hey Naruto-kun," cause I don't know, plot convenience. But she said it on accident, as Konohamaru would then think this must be Naruto's girlfriend. So he'd make the same joke as he did with Sakura, just not the flat-chested part. So then Hinata would turn completely red, as then she'd pass out. With Gaara and Tamari still being there, Tamari would chuckle at this, but Gaara would just smile devilishly like, a pedophile trying to prey on a child, but we're not talking about that. So, as then Gaara would just say, "We'll see you at the Chunin exams." And just as he's saying this is when Kankuro would run back as he tried to punch Naruto, but Gaara would stop him with his hand. As he'd say, "If you don't stop, I'll kill you." As Kankuro would get scared and he'd leave with Gaara. As then we skip to the first part of the Chunin exams. Because Naruto and Hinata were on the team in this, they would still end up. So, you know what? Go back a little bit. We go back to the Rock Lee and Sasuke fight. That would still happen, same as canon. As Sasuke wouldn't have awakened his Sharingan again, so he wouldn't have the imperfect Sharingan, so he'd just have the one Tomoe in both eyes.
so he could beat worse than Kanon. As Rock Lee wouldn't even have to take off his bandages in order to beat Sasuke. However, when Lee was gonna do the Leaf Hurricane to launch him up in the air, Naruto, who appeared in front of Rock Lee, blocked his kick with a kick of his own, sending Rock Lee into a wall. And my guy, who was watching all of this, would think this kid is powerful. He was able to counter Rock Lee's kick with what looks like no effort at all. That would normally break someone's leg. As they then continue into the tuning exams, at least the written portion of it, as Naruto and Hinata would be sitting beside each other, Naruto, who still had Choji and Shikamaru's recommendation from when they had left before in his mind, would think, maybe after the tuning exams, or maybe after the forced of death or whatever we're doing next. Maybe after whatever we're doing next, I should ask her. As he'd be thinking about this throughout the entire test, as he'd realize this test is about cheating, or at least not being caught cheating. So he and Hinata would cheat together, as Sasuke would, being stubborn, try to figure it out his own way. As then, well, the 10th question would come. Naruto wouldn't give the same speech as in canon because his personality is different in this. Well, slightly different, but different. So, instead, the same people would stay, the same people would leave. As then Anko would come swinging in through the window like a gorilla. But anyway, she'd come in, she'd look at Naruto weirdly. Well, kind of like the way Orochimaru looks at Sasuke, like a pedophile. Naruto would feel a bit creeped out by this, as Hinata would glare at her. Anko, getting the message, would stop and just be like, okay. As then they'd continue to the forest of death. In the forest of death, let's just say Hagoromo, he didn't give Naruto Sage Mode because he realized what would happen if he would give Naruto Sage Mode, as he realized Naruto would just get stuck in it like he did. So instead, he taught Naruto to sense Sage Chakra, because Hagoromo, reading the future, would know about the Orochimaru attack. So Naruto, sensing Sage Chakra, would realize that there's someone in Sage Mode near him, as he'd look at this one this one grass ninja, as she would be looking at Sasuke weirdly. Well, yeah, weirdly. Like he was not her target, more like she wanted him, not in a NSFW type way. So Naruto would take note of this, as Anko would throw the kunai at him while he was studying this grass ninja. As Naruto would catch the kunai and throw it back at Anko, as it cut her cheek, and the Naruto would appear behind her saying, it's not nice to throw kunais at someone who, well, it's not nice to throw kunais at people weaker than you. I don't know, but something like that. Anyway, they continue to the forest of death. So they continue the force of death. Let's say Naruto's team would get an Earth Scroll, as then they'd be trying to find the heaven scroll. They had went after 5 teams, but all 5 of those teams had an earth scroll. As they were getting frustrated, as they decided to take a break because Naruto had to, you know, drain the pipe, I guess. So he'd go to drain the pipe. Orochimaru would still summon that stupid snake. Naruto would still fall for it, just like in canon, but he'd deal with it much quicker. So when he'd come back, he'd see Hinata and Sasuke battling Orochimaru's bloodlust binding thing, or whatever that was. As then he'd put Hinata in a genjutsu because she was already straining herself trying to resist the bloodlust binding, and she couldn't afford to waste any chakra, so she hadn't activated her Byakugan. As Hinata would be in a genjutsu just on her knees on the ground, like Sakura was. As Sasuke, having his Sharingan activated, wouldn't be put in a genjutsu. So he'd battle Orochimaru and get whooped about twice as bad as in canon. And as Naruto would arrive, Orochimaru would have just finished putting the curse mark on Sasuke. So Naruto, realizing that he was too late, would get angry. As Orochimaru would be just about to leave, as he'd feel a fist just slam into his face, as he'd go flying through about 10 trees. As he'd look back and see Naruto with Nine-Tails chakra in the two-tailed state. As then Naruto would rush at Orochimaru again, spamming Rasengans and flying Raijins like Minato would. Literally just like Minato would. As then Orochimaru would do his best to fight back, but because Orochimaru has limited chakra in his body, he had no other option but to escape, because he could not match Naruto's chakra. So he'd flee, like in canon. And like a minute after he left, they would see Anko running by, as she sensed Orochimaru's chakra but couldn't do anything, as she would be angered by this. And she'd ask them if they saw a snake person anywhere, as Naruto would point the direction Orochimaru went, and she would run off in that direction with 2 other Jonin. As they would still need to find the Heaven Scroll, because Orochimaru this time would be disappointed by Sasuke's weakness, so he wouldn't give them the scroll. As Naruto on his own would have to body a sound getting team, and take their scroll, which would be a heaven scroll. So they would go to the tower, summon Kakashi, the whole curse mark thing with Sasuke would still happen. Hinata would be fine. The genjutsu was harmless. Well, harmless physically. Mentally, she was a bit bruised, but it would heal naturally. So we'd skip to I don't remember if the 1 month training period was before or after the preliminaries. I think it was after. So we'd skip to the preliminaries. Let's say in this, Kiba would have a crush on Hinata, just because. Pretty sure he didn't canon, but he never acted on it. So anyway, he realized that Hinata had a crush on Naruto, but Naruto would be too dense to think anything of Hinata having a crush on him, so he didn't know. Which is why he was so nervous about asking her on a date. So anyway, he'd think, I'm gonna defeat Naruto and win Hinata's love. So he'd go on to start taunting Naruto about him being the dead last in the academy and all of that. As then the battle would begin. As Naruto would watch Kiba thoroughly, because Kiba is, well, a one-trick pony, so he'd get bodied pretty easily. He'd get knocked out almost immediately, so he'd be knocked out, and, well, the rest of the matches don't really matter. Sakura and Ino, Sakura would be weaker because, well, she didn't have Sasuke to motivate her to do anything. So Ino would wash Sakura because she would have given up on Sasuke. After seeing how Naruto and Hinata were just friendly, realizing that she has chances with other people instead of Sasuke. She, in this, would actually have a crush on Rock Lee because she likes how motivated he is. But she can't work up the courage to tell him. So she will wait until they get to fight, or if they get to fight, which they won't because he still fights Gaara and he still gets injured. Now we go to Neji versus Hinata. Let's say she can activate her Tentagon just yet. It's kind of like how with Sasuke when he activated his Sharingan when Itachi killed the clan the first time. She completely forgot that she had the Tentagon, as she could only hold it for about a minute after she at first activated it. So Naruto wished her good luck, as she took this to heart, and she did much better than in canon, but in the end she still lost. As when Neji was about to, well, kill her or whatever he was gonna do, Naruto would knock him into the wall, as he then began to barrage Neji, because he was very angry at this point because of how much Neji had been slandering her and bullying her, as he still bullied her all those years, telling her how weak and pathetic she was, which is why she could never tell Naruto how she felt. So basically, Naruto would basically Muda barrage Neji as he'd fly into a wall, as then he'd continue Muda barraging Neji until he flew through the wall, as then he'd be knocked out. Although Hinata would be disqualified, Naruto would make a promise right then and there to Hinata and on his life, that he would avenge Hinata and defeat Neji. As we then go to the 1 month training period. And let's say a week after this month began, we'll say the training with Jiraiya started after 2 weeks, and a week after the 1 month began, he decided to go to ask Hinata on a date, like he said he probably would. He decided, since he already, showed he cared something about her, so he realized, might as well. So he asked Hinata on a date, and he was very surprised when she said yes, as she would be extremely red. She'd be doing the weird finger poking thing, which she does not do unless she's super embarrassed, and this would be like the one of the few times she actually does this. So she says yes. They go to, just for simplicity's sake, they go to Ichiraku Ramen, because they were thinking about where to go, as Hinata would suggest Ichiraku Ramen because she knows it's Naruto's favorite place to eat, and she likes it there too. So they'll go to Ichiraku Ramen. Teuchi and Ayame would say hello to Naruto and Hinata as they come in there regularly, as Ayame would start to joke with Hinata asking her if she's on a date with Naruto. And she'd be shocked when Hinata said yes. And she'd be proud of them. And so would Teiuchi. As just because they're on a date, Teiuchi would then say, just because it's your first date and all of this is on the house. As Naruto would smile like he normally would in canon, it'd say, "Thanks a lot, old man." As they'd proceed to eat like 30 bowls of ramen, over here looking like Po from Kung Fu Panda, but he squeezes it in somehow. But anyway, as by this time it would be evening, as Naruto had started to walk Hinata home. The Hyuga clan would actually respect Naruto for how strong he is, because they knew something was up with his grades at the academy and his performance as a ninja. As they'd spy on Naruto training, and they'd realize how strong he was, so they respected him for his power, instead of hating him and calling him a demon. So they'd let Naruto walk Hinata home. As Naruto, after walking her to the gate of the Hyuga compound, would begin to leave. As Hinata would tell him to wait, as then he'd turn around and she'd kiss him. As they hold this kiss for about a minute, as they must be panting afterward. As then, Naruto would feel a lot of things. He'd feel confused, happy, a lot of things, excited, and embarrassed at the same time, as they'd both turn red. As Hinata would rush into the gate, saying goodbye to Naruto, as Naruto would just chuckle and walk home. As then he'd go to sleep. And the next day, which would start the second week, is where he finds Jiraiya, doing his research, and it's where they start training. And since Naruto already knows the Rasengan and all that, Jiraiya would instead try to help Naruto work on his taijutsu for this month. Well, his taijutsu and chakra control, because he needs higher chakra control, as his chakra control is at a low Geni. After training in chakra control and taijutsu, Naruto's taijutsu has gone up to a low Jonin's taijutsu, and his chakra control is at mid Jonin. As he is now at the level of high Jonin, although he still hides his power. Well, he will hide his power until the final battle against Gaara. As now we go to the final part of the tuning exams. Just telling y'all right now, I'm gonna end this off after the tuning exams. I don't know how far I'm gonna go with this series, but after the tuning exams arc, it'll be the end of this part. So anyway, I can't remember the first match, but let's say all matches go up to canon up until Naruto's, to where he has to fight Neji. Instead of, it's being a evenly matched battle for the most part. Naruto getting wrecked by Neji until he activates 9-tail chakra. Then it becomes an even battle. Instead, Naruto just mollywops Neji the whole match. I mean the entire match. He just mollywops him. It isn't even a fight. It's just a beating. And even after the match, Naruto is tired from how much he pounded Neji into the ground. So we skip over to Sasuke and Gaara's fight, as Sasuke would learn the Chidori, as Naruto actually would help Sasuke by removing Orochimaru's influence from the curse mark, allowing Sasuke to use his chakra again and use the curse mark without being under Orochimaru's control. So Sasuke would actually unlock the Tsutomu Sharingan in this month of training with Kakashi, as well as learn the Chidori. So Naruto, well, Sasuke and Gaara would still fight, as Sasuke would still Chidori Gaara and do his ultimate defense, as he'd get freaked out from seeing his blood, as Shikaku would rampage, as the Genjutsu would still happen, and the Leaf would still be attacked. All this would go the same as canon, though we skipped to Naruto and Gaara's fight, as Sasuke had just been beaten by Gaara's half Shikaku form, and Hinata had went with Sasuke knowing he was going to do something stupid. As Naruto saw Hinata stuck against the tree, as she had to push Sasuke out of the way of getting hit by the sand, as she got stuck to the tree. So Gaara would still threaten her life. So Naruto would feel weird. He'd feel a mixture of emotions: worry, anger, humiliation, sadness. He'd feel more anger than anything, as then instead of Nine-Tails chakra, he'd begin to feel something different, something coming from his eyes, as then he'd unlock his Rinnegan. Well, not the Rinnegan yet. He'd actually unlock his Mangekyo, but since he's half Otsutsuki, it'd be the Eternal Mangekyo. Let's say I'm not gonna give his Eternal Mangekyo ability, because soon he's gonna be unlocking his Rinnegan, and I'll give that a special ability instead. So let's just say his Eternal Mangekyo will basically, you know how the Sharingan perceives things, like the one Tomoe perceives things half speed, the two Tomoe at 1/4 speed, and the three Tomoe at that. So basically, Naruto sees things at about 30 times slower than the average person. So he can see something traveling at the speed of light if he focuses on it. But that's only if he focuses on it. He can see Madara's Limbo clones. Well, he will have the ability to see Limbo clones as well. He will not have to sense them, as he would then begin to fight Gaara while summoning Gamabunta, because he would still learn the summoning jutsu, but because of him being a prodigy, he'd master it instantly. So he and Gamabunta would fight Gaara. The same thing would happen as canon, as he transformed Gamabunta into the Nine-Tails, as the Nine-Tails Gamabunta would destroy Shikaku's sand body. Naruto would headbutt Gaara, and he'd wake up, as they'd become friends, and all of that would happen. Let's say that when Shikaku got disintegrated, Hinata would escape from the sand and head back to the village to help out with the invasion. Well, it would have been before that, because he would have gathered all of his sand to form Shikaku's body. And Shikaku would have launched a wind attack at the village. This would actually have hit not only Hinata, but Kakashi, the Ichiraku Ramen shop, Teuchi, Ayame, and the third Hokage, as well as Orochimaru, which would have destroyed the barrier. so the Turtle Kage wouldn't die, as the Jonin who were trying to break the barrier would be able to get in. Naruto, after arriving back at the village, would see Hinata on the ground bloody, and he'd see Kakashi and Might Guy on the ground as well. Well, he'd see Kakashi and Might Guy on a knee, as they were coughing up blood, because the wind jutsu had pretty much knocked the wind out of both of them, and it had left Hinata in a near-death state. So, Hinata would tell Naruto that if she were to die, she wants him to live on. Naruto would actually feel a lot of extreme emotions at this point, as the adrenaline would still be running high from the earlier battle with Gaara. So he'd feel so angered that he couldn't stop it, as he tried to stop it but couldn't, that he'd unlock his Rinnegan as Hinata would be passing out. She would be dead for a few minutes, but ultimately just revive on her own, as her heart would start to beat again. But Naruto would think she was dead permanently. Also in this canon, so he'd rush to fight Orochimaru, who had revived not only the first and second Hokage, but Minato as well. But Minato, well, his body had already been taken control of before he could talk to anyone. So he wouldn't be able to tell Naruto anything. As then they'd start to fight. As Naruto would rush over to Orochimaru, Rinnegan activated and used the Almighty Push, destroying the first Hokage's deep forest emergence and knocking away the second Hokage and Minato. As then he'd attack Orochimaru, keeping him away from the third Hokage and not allowing him to use the Izanagi sword, I think that's what it's called. So, no, the third Hokage wouldn't be stabbed. He and Monkey King Enma would be fighting off the first and second Hokage, as Naruto would be fighting off Orochimaru and Minato. As he would knock away Orochimaru, he sensed something familiar with Minato, but he couldn't figure it out. As he just continued fighting until he realized that they're regenerating, and the only way to destroy it, the only way to kill the bodies was to destroy it completely and release the soul that was trapped in it. So he came up with the idea of using the Rasen Shuriken. So he made a Rasen Shuriken and threw it at Minato, as it destroyed his fake revived body, as it, well, released his soul. As then he would fight Orochimaru. Well, as then he'd begin to fight Orochimaru, spamming shadow clones all along the way. As two of these shadow clones would go to help out the third Hokage, as in they'd throw Rasen Shuriken at the first and second Hokage, releasing their souls as well. As Naruto and the third Hokage would be body bagging Orochimaru, basically because it's 2-on-1, as he'd still run away just like in canon. But Naruto, well, instead of using the Reaper Death Seal, the third Hokage used just a very strong seal that took away a lot of his chakra, and he sealed Orochimaru's arms. This seal could be broken, but only by the third Hokage. So kind of like the Reaper Death Seal, but without a key. Only if the person who made the seal dies, the seal could be broken. So instead, the third Hokage, realizing that he'd be stuck with this burden and having Orochimaru's goons would attack him for the rest of his life, instead he'd find a way to transplant the chakra he used to make the seal onto let's say the little statue head of his own great stone face. So if his great stone face were to be destroyed, the seal on Orochimaru's arms would also be destroyed. So as he believed that those spaces would stay up there, well, forever, or at least until after Orochimaru died. So now, no matter what body Orochimaru transplants himself into, he'd be stuck with those. He'd be stuck with no arms. So then, well, Orochimaru would escape. They'd still try to recruit Sasuke. Sasuke, being more jealous of Naruto than ever, seeing his Rinnegan, would go with them. And I haven't gotten into Naruto's Rinnegan ability yet. Naruto's Rinnegan ability will be, well, since he can already perceive it many times faster than the average person. Let's say he can. Let's say he can. His special ability allows him to move at the speed of light, not like the flying Raijin. Well, no. Let's say he gets strength equivalent to that of someone who could move at the speed of light. So basically, he has the power to send something flying at the speed of light. However, he can only use this like Goku does Kaioken. So Goku uses Kaioken. It has very bad side effects if he uses it too much. And Naruto can only use this 3 times per battle. And it's very hard to like actually hit because he has to do this within a punch, like the way Tsunade does with making the ground shake. As if he were to punch something directly, it'd destroy the planet. So he'd have to punch the air or the ground. As the Earth could handle impact directly, but if it were to just be sent through air pressure, it would slice the planet in half. So that's my excuse. So now Naruto would continue. Well, the Chunin exams would be over. Naruto would actually be promoted to Jonin, and Hinata would be promoted to High Chunin, well, Elite Chunin. Sasuke would become a Chunin, but he'd still leave the village like in canon, because he's jealous of Naruto's Rinnegan. So he'd leave. Sakura would still try to get Naruto to make that same promise, but instead of Naruto making the promise, it'd be, let's say it'd be Rock Lee. Ino would be angry at this because, well, she had a crush on Rock Lee, and Sakura got him involved with Sasuke's business and her business. Well, Sasuke and her business. So she'd be angry at this, and this would cause a rift in their friendship, as they wouldn't be friends anymore. I don't know why I put that there. I just wanted it to be there. So anyway, this is when they have to go find Tsunade. As Hiruzen, after this battle, realizes he's getting too old, as he should have been able to easily defeat Orochimaru. So he sends him to go find Tsunade. And in this, let's say Naruto, just so it makes sense for him to get the Rinnegan, Tsunade would be Minato's mother. Just cause. So they'd go and find Tsunade. Naruto would still challenge her and get angry about her disrespecting the Kage faces and all of that. So Naruto would then fight her, not using anything above not using his Sharingan at all. He would only use his physical strength, which would be equal to that of Tsunade's. But he'd outsmart her because she was drunk. So he'd still win. Well, he would win, as she would not heal Orochimaru, as there would be nothing she could do. as they would go back to Leaf Village. Oh yeah, the Itachi and Kisame fight. Naruto would body both of them, like, easily. It wouldn't even be a contest. Like, it's not even a contest. Although he would have a challenge with Itachi because Itachi is about as smart as he is. So, when it came to Itachi, he just had to outsmart him and avoid his genjutsus because he wasn't using his Sharingan at the time because he didn't want the Akatsuki to know that he had one. So while he was trying to figure out loopholes for all these restrictions he had to be put under, he was battling Kisame. Samehara was trying to take his chakra, but he wouldn't let Samehara touch him. So, as he was just parrying Samehara with the kunai would begin to chip away, like anything else that touches Samehara. So, after the kunai breaks, he would have to fight Kisame with bare fists. As he then would kick Kisame away, not killing him, but knocking him out. As then he and Itachi would then begin to battle, he'd have to find a way to both outsmart Itachi, not use his Sharingan, and fight him with no weapons whatsoever against Itachi, who ended up having to use Amaterasu, but Jiraiya arrived in time to stop it from hitting Naruto. As the same thing would happen, as he'd have to use it again to get out of the toad stomach thing. As he'd find Kisame, and they would retreat to the Akatsuki base, reporting in on what happened. As Tsunade would return to the village, become the Hokage because of her bet, Naruto and Hinata would go on another date. They would go on another date. Naruto would actually get her a necklace. It'd have both the symbol of the Hyuga clan and the symbol of the Uzumaki clan in it, with Hinata's initials on the back of the Hyuga clan symbol and Naruto's initials on the back of the Uzumaki clan symbol. As Hinata would wear the Hyuga clan one and Naruto would wear the Uzumaki one. As they could be put together and they would form, well, the Hyuga and the Uzumaki clan thing was actually part of a genjutsu that was specially made for this necklace. So if they were to put it together, it would form a yin and yang sign. As this is when Jiraiya is about to take Naruto for the 3 years of training, and this is where I'm going to be leaving it off. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and like, and, well, see you.